Hello and welcome to ASM Arts and Crafts. I am your instructor today, and today we will be making some paper pieced hexagons. I used Slow and Steady by Tula Pink. The colors, as you can see, are very on trend. They are very bold and bright. Tula Pink is one of the more popular designers in the quilting world. Her fabrics are usually released as a limited edition, so once they go out of print, they can sell for hundreds of dollars on eBay if you're looking for something in particular. But her designs are just very interesting and intricate, and they're a lot of fun. There's a lot that you can do with them. So paper pieced hexagons are bits of fabric. You can make them in any size, really. These are actually 2 inches along the edge, 4 inches from long point to long point there. So there are people that even piece, 1/4 inch ones, and that's a little bit beyond what I like to do. But anyway, these are bits of fabric, and you fold the fabric over a paper template to form a shape, and then you put these shapes together and you can make things like quilts or bags, just all sorts of things. And the great thing is you don't even have to have a project in mind when you start, because they're so versatile. So I actually found this pack of fabrics at my local fabric store, and I said, I need that in my life, and at this point I have no idea what to do with it. But I will eventually figure that out. In the meantime, I'm just gonna keep on piecing them. So I like to keep my tools for paper piecing in a little tin. This way I can throw it all in my bag when I'm on the go and I have everything ready. I spend a lot of time sitting in the carpool line, or I'm out running errands and I have a few minutes when I'm sitting on hold, or when I'm sitting and watching YouTube videos or videos for school, that sort of thing. It's really handy to have something to do with my hands, and then I feel productive without having to set aside time to be productive. Alright, so in my tin I have everything that I need. So let's start with some of the basics. You'll need a cutting device. A lot of people will use a small pair of scissors. These, I believe I just got at Michael's or Joann's for just a few dollars. They don't need to be anything fancy. I like to have specific sewing scissors so that they don't get dull. My children know, do not touch mom's scissors. Because once you start cutting other things, they become dull, and you can sharpen them, but I feel like they never perform the same way after that. So I just like to keep them separate. Alright, so we have the scissors. An option that I really enjoy, and this is something relatively new in the quilting world, this is called a thread cutter. It's from a company called Thread Cutters with a Z. They were recently on Shark Tank, and I actually bought this prior to that. But it's a blade housed here under this bump, as you can see, and it slips on your finger, and it's just for ease of cutting. It was originally used for cutting fishing lines. However, the inventor of this discovered that it was wonderful for the quilting world, and it is fantastic. It just is so convenient. I don't have to put my work down to cut the thread and pick up the scissors. So I really enjoy this, and it just slips right on your finger, and it's adjustable. So if you have super skinny fingers or super fat fingers, whatever you have, it will fit. So it does come in a couple of colors. I just got the standard black, and I believe it was $12.99 on Amazon, and it was Prime shipping. So keep that in mind if this is something that you think you'll do. Alright, and then we have thread, of course. This is just plain white cotton thread, probably Coats and Clark. I'm not sure. I had spun this bobbin up for a project, and I didn't use it all, so I figured I would just grab it and throw it in my tin. Any thread works. At this point, it doesn't even matter what color it is, because you're not ever going to see these threads. So pick whatever color you want. If you want something that's visible to you so that you can see your stitches better, absolutely do that. I just chose white because I had it and I have it in so much abundance. Doesn't matter if it's just going to be hidden. Okay, and then next, of course, we need needles. We'll also need that, but these are clover needles. I believe they are called black and golds. These are the quilting needles, so they're a little short. I actually used the longest one, but it has a very, very sharp point. I don't know if you can see exactly how sharp that is, but it goes right into the skin. But these are pretty high quality at a reasonable price. I don't recall how much I paid, but they do have them on Amazon. I want to say they were only like $4 or $5. They're an add-on item though, so I actually just added them with an order of baby diapers. So, but these are fantastic. But you can use an applique needle. You can use any sort of needle that you have as long as it has a closed eye. You don't want some of the ones that are that have the open eye, which are for like weaving in ends. Anyway, that's probably too much information at this point. Let's move on. All right, so you're also going to need a pin, just any sewing pin. It can be any length. I like the long ones just because I feel like it gives me a little more control over my fabric and my template, as you'll see. So you can get those at any craft store. Then you'll need your templates. So I got these at Joann's. It was a pack of 50 for, I believe, $4.99. You can use a coupon on them. These are a heavier cardstock than regular paper, so that way you can use them multiple times without them getting all ruined and bent out of shape. And then they have a hole cut in the middle, which is pretty important in this situation, so I will explain that. These shapes, you can get them pre-cut, like I said, at Joann's. There is a whole company that does them, paperpieces.com, and they have them in so many sizes, it's mind-boggling, and they also have so many shapes. You can also cut them by hand yourself, so don't feel like you need to go out and spend money on pieces of paper that are just eventually going to get thrown away. You can just use scrap paper if you have it. It's not a big deal. So there are websites as well where you can get many sizes and shapes. It'll print it out for you, and then you just cut along the line. So there are options for that. And the last thing that you're going to need is the fabric. So I got this Tula Pink fabric from my local fabric store. And it actually came pre-cut in the hexagon shape. It's called a honeycomb, and it came with multiple of each print. So her fabric line usually has about 20 or so different fabrics, maybe a few more, like 24 or 25. Anyway, so it comes with at least one of each print in the line, and then sometimes there are duplicates. So it's a good amount of fabric that you're getting for the price. I believe these are typically under $20, and you probably get about 40 to 50 of these. So not too shabby. But if you have fabric that you would like to use already, or you have, scraps or things like that, that's perfectly fine. This is just a square of a different fabric. I don't know which one. I got it in a swap that I was doing. So you just want to make sure that it's a little bit bigger than your template, because you're going to be folding the excess fabric over. And if you don't have a lot of space and you're right on the edge, it's not going to give you anything to fold over, and then it's going to pop out. It's not going to fold in like it needs to. So just make sure it's a little bit bigger, and it's okay to have the extra. You don't need to clip the corners or anything at this point, because what's going to happen is that's all going to be hidden anyway, so don't stress about that. All right, so now that we have everything we need, we'll go ahead and we'll put this away, and let's get ready here. So I'm going to be using the thread cutter. I really, really enjoy this. It just saves a lot of time. Alright, so these are ones that I've already done. Just put those back here so you have something else to look at. But see, they'll just fit snugly together like this. just like that. And then my next video will be showing you how to put these together. There are multiple ways to piece these. Some people sew right through the paper templates here. They'll just baste it just like, just like regular hand sewing like you've seen, your grandma do. But the way I like to do it, it just goes through the fabric. It does not go through the paper. So that's why you don't need to worry about the color of the thread, because you're never going to see it on the front. As you can see, there's no thread there. And this way you don't even have to clip the thread off when you're done. You can just sew it all together and make whatever you want to make. You don't have to go back through and clip off all these pieces of thread. Oh my goodness, what a lot of work. Forget that. Don't worry about it. So this is going to be what I think is the best way to do this. I'm sure that there are other ways that people have found that they enjoy, but for me, this works because it's the least amount of work, honestly. I mean, hand sewing these is, it's a lot of work. It takes some time to do these, especially in the amount that you need to actually make something substantial. However, this way is the quickest I've found, and it doesn't have extra steps. So let's stop rambling and we'll get started. So the first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to pull out some thread. I typically do a couple of tugs on it, because I want to have enough to do a couple of these without having to rethread, because that's a pain. But you don't want so much that the yarn is going to tangle, because that causes such a headache. So I'm going to cut with my thread cutter, and you're just going to wrap it around just like this, and give it a hard tug. If you give it a soft tug, it tends to fray a little bit more, which makes it harder to thread that tiny, tiny eye. And I can see that this has a little bit sticking out, so I may need to wet it a bit. There we go. Alright, and I'm going to pull out my needle here. I like to use the longest one because I have fat fingers. I don't know if you've noticed, but I have sausages here, and it just makes it easier to have that extra space. So now the eye on this is incredibly small, so if you need a needle threading helper, they make those and sell those at any of the craft stores that sell sewing supplies. All right, and then I'm going to pull this through. I don't know if you can see very well, but my thread is doubled, but I don't want to go all the way to the end so that's doubled all the way. I want to leave a bit of space here. So you can see where it ends the double here, and then it extends for a bit here. So we'll just adjust as we need to. We don't want it doubled. It doesn't need to be that sturdy. But then we can make it longer, so we don't have to refill it as often. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab one of my templates, and I'm going to grab my fabric. I'm going to turn my fabric over so that the right side, the pattern side, is down, and you can see the back side here. And then I'm going to place my template. With this one, I'm going to just go ahead and put it right in the middle. But if you, say, wanted to capture more of like these flowers here, you can definitely move that template over a bit. You don't want to move it all the way over, because then it makes it hard to fold down. But it's okay if it's off center. It doesn't need to be centered perfectly in this case. But I'm just going to, because I don't really care about capturing that on that one. Okay, so then you're going to hold these together with your left hand or right hand, however you want to do it, I don't care. And then with the other hand, just grab the single pin that you have. You're going to be stabilizing this and sticking these together so that it's easier to work with. So what I do is put the needle in, just into the fabric at one side of the circle, and then you're going to sort of bend it a bit. Do you see I'm bending it there? And then push it up through the other end so it catches it. So now the two are connected, so you're not going to drop your template while you're working. That is a big headache. And people do other things with these. You can use a glue basting, because most glues, like Elmer's glue or glue sticks, they'll wash out of the fabrics. They're water soluble, so they'll eventually come out when you wash your finished product. I prefer this though because when you're removing the papers later, it can stick and pull on the fabric, and I don't want to have to deal with that. So for me, it's worth it to just carry an extra pin around in my tin. Okay, so now comes the fun part. So we're going to go ahead and I'm going to start up here on this edge, and you're just going to take that excess fabric and just fold it over. You're going to pull it taut on the edge there. You can use your fingers to help, and you're just going to fold it over like this. Okay, so you can see it's forming a nice crisp edge there. And then what I do is I'll kind of walk my fingers over, but be pushing down on the fabric, pushing it towards the template. See, like this. That way you ensure that it's pulled tight and it's not going to pucker. You definitely don't want that. So then what I do is with my other hand, I'm kind of smoothing out this other fabric here, getting ready to fold it. And then I'm going to take my right thumbnail and I'm going to just put it right there on the edge, so that when I do fold this fabric over, it's going to form a nice crisp miter. So I'm also going to, as I'm folding it, I'm going to tug a bit on this fabric because it's going to relax when I let go. But then this way I ensure that it's nice and tight on there. And then as I'm folding it, I'm going to move my thumbnail out of the way, and then I'm going to hold that corner down. So then what I do with my left hand is I sort of do the same thing I did on the other side, where I smooth the fabric down towards the template. And as you can see, we've got a nice crisp flat corner here. So I'm going to hold this in place, and we're going to go ahead and start stitching. So I'm going to pick up my needle and thread. I'm going to make sure it's not knotted. All right, so that's going to be fine. And then what I'm going to do is with my left hand, I'm going to hold this together. I want to make sure that this corner doesn't pop up. I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to go into the fabric only. Remember, do not go into that paper. It'll cause you so much stress later. I'm going to go under maybe 2, 3, 4 threads. It doesn't have to be a lot, but it also doesn't really matter how many you do. You're never going to see this. Then I'm going to go up through on the other side. So you can see here I've got on that side. So I've got on the right, and then there's my crease, and then I go up onto the left, okay? And then I'm going to pull this through. I'm not going to pull it all the way through. I don't have a knot at the end because I think that it just takes so much extra time to knot it. You don't need to. Just leave a bit of a tail, 1.5 inches to 2 inches. And then what you're going to do is you're going to go back in. You can either go in the same hole or right next to it and do the same thing. So go in a couple of threads on the right and then a couple of threads on the left, push it through, and then just pull it through. Make sure it doesn't knot and it doesn't catch on any of the other corners. Right, so, of course. Right, and then there we go. So we've secured this corner. Because it's the very first one, I want to go ahead and do a third stitch in this just to make sure that it sticks. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go in right near where I went before. I think I'm up maybe 1 thread, which is perfect. Adds a little bit of security. So then we're going to go and push right through, pull it up through, and there we go. So that end is secured. That's not going anywhere. As you can see, it's nice and solid, so you don't have to worry about it. So now what we're going to do is we're going to turn it. We're going to turn clockwise. I just find that it's easier to work the thread this way rather than trying to go back the other way, but you can do whatever is comfortable. So I'm going to do the same thing with this one. I'm going to fold over the excess fabric, which you can see is already started, and I'm just going to sort of tug on it and push it down towards the template, kind of roll it from the other side. You can see it's flat. There's no puckering over here where I'm working. That means that everything is lined up fine. It's not skewed or anything at this point. Okay. So now when I get to that edge, I'm going to do the same thing that I did before with my thumbnail. I'm going to just put it right there so that when I pull this fabric and fold it over, it makes a nice, crisp, flat miter. See? Alright, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go in, couple of threads there, and then go up on the left side. See? And then you just pull it through. All right, and then what happens is this thread sort of stabilizes this fabric and keeps it from flopping around. All right, and then because we're not on the edge, we're not at the beginning, I'm just going to do 2 stitches in this corner here. There we go. All right, now as you can see, I'm running out of the space where my thread is doubled. So when I pull it across, it would get stuck in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tug a little bit on my needle and give a little bit more space there. You don't ever want it to get doubled up. You just want to use a single strand of thread. That's more than adequate for this because these stitches are just temporarily holding it in place. All right, so we're going to do the same thing as we did on that second one. We're going to fold this over, sort of work our fingers down, pushing the fabric towards the template. When I get to the corner, I'm going to take the other side and pull it, and there we go. Just do the best that you can on these. A lot of this will be hidden, so this entire backside you're never ever going to see. So don't worry too much if it looks weird. If you take too big of a bite with your thread back here, it's not a big deal. It doesn't have to be perfect. All right, just do whatever gets the job done. All right, so we're just going to do 2 there. All right, totally secure, good to move on. Okay, I did not poke myself on the edge. That's always a plus. All right. I have a tendency with the long pin to get myself as I come around that corner. But I got lucky today. All right, so then we're gonna pull that down. Okay, and then we'll take a couple of threads. Oh, I got caught around the corner. You just pull that over and you're good. Alright, we're getting towards the end here. Alright, we're going to do the same thing with this one. Alright, so alright, there we go. And then we take a little bite. There we are. And number 2. Oh, there we go. I need a little bit more slack there for the next one. All right, so now we are at the last corner, and you can see these are both already started with the fold. So we're essentially going to do the same thing that we did for all of the other ones, but this one we're going to pull a little bit tighter because we do need to fix any puckering that might happen because of loose fabric. So just fold over at the right side and push it down, work your fingers over. Do the same thing with the thumbnail. And then on this one, I'm going to pull a little bit tighter than I've pulled on the other ones. And it's okay if this pops up a little bit like this, it's fine. As you can see from the other side, it's not going to mess up the fabric or anything. That's just the nature of it. The fabric has been distorted just a little bit, and that's okay. It happens. It's just cotton. All right, so let me do, and just like with the first corner that we did, we're going to do 3 stitches just for extra security. 2 should be fine, but why not do 3? It takes just a second to do that, and then you have that peace of mind. Okay, so we're done with that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my thread cutter, and I'm going to just pull that off. Okay, so now those are nice and done. You can either leave those on, or I will sometimes pull out my scissors and just cut a little closer so I don't have those threads hanging on things. We can take out the pin now because it's nice and secure. This isn't going anywhere. And then we have our nice hexagon here. All the edges look good. Everything looks fine. And as you can see, we've just gone through the fabric. So removing these is not going to be any issue. We're not through the paper at all, so they'll just pop right out when the time comes. What you want to do though is you want to make your hexagons first. Most likely, some people don't. Some people like to put them together as they make them. But like in my case, I don't really know what I want to make with this yet. I'll probably end up turning it into a baby blanket because my sister-in-law and her wife just had twins yesterday, a little boy and a little girl. I've already made them quilts, but I feel like the world needs more pretty quilts. So I'm okay with making multiples for them. But you can do so much with these. And yeah, I like to just make a big pile of them and then figure out what I'm going to do. I might make some white ones so that these designs go further. I do have a lot of them, but then I would have options. But anyway, so these are our paper piece hexagons. They're so versatile and they're just such a great to-go project when you want to be productive but you don't have the time or the means to sit down somewhere and get things done. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. My next one will be how to actually piece them together to make something cohesive. If you do have any suggestions for things that you would like to see in the future, please leave them in the comments below. I primarily sew, but I also knit, I can crochet, I can do anything, I can try anything at least. So let me know what you'd like to see on this channel, and hopefully this gave you some tingles and maybe inspired you to be a little bit creative with your time today. So thank you so much for watching.